I was watching you do your live reports earlier on the TV, James, and all of a sudden I saw hundreds of journalists scrambling in the background.
Yeah.
And I understand they just opened the gates for you to get a seat in the press
Yeah, you don't want that, do you? You're staring down the barrel of the camera, trying to retain some deep thought, and suddenly it's all kicking off.
In the end, it didn't matter where you were sat in the press conference, though, because
no,
nobody got a question.
Well, exactly, yeah. But I was opposite Ivor. You were amongst the
I filmed
Russians.
I filmed some behind the scenes shots of you.
We did.
Sat in your seat.
Exclusive.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a story I give to you alone, Ivor. Don't worry. An exclusive.
I'm Martha Kellner.
And I'm James Matthews.
And joining us again today is Sky's Moscow correspondent, Ivor Bennett.
Hello again. Good to be back.
Yeah,
feels like I've never left, actually.
It's day 208 of Trump's second term. And the headline, well, they say they have a deal, Alaska baked. My words, not theirs. I'm not sure how it goes down, mind you, elsewhere. There wasn't a single mention of the word at the heart of the matter today, ceasefire.
Yeah, Trump called the meeting a 10. Presumably he meant out of 10 and not out of 100. We'll unpick exactly what happened, or didn't happen rather, in this historic meeting.
You say Alaska baked. I think it might be more Alaska half baked, because this was a summit for nothing. And at the end of it, actually, Vladimir Putin spoke in English. Really quite unusual to hear him speak in English. What did he say? See you in Moscow.
See you in Moscow.
Setting the stage for the next one.
Yeah, sounds darkly threatening.
So, James, Ivor, Donald Trump greeted Vladimir Putin on the tarmac at Joint Base Elmendorf-Richardson with a round of applause. The Russian president must have been patting himself on the back on the way out, because this is a man, lest we forget, who invaded a sovereign nation just over 3 years ago, wanted by the International Criminal Court for alleged war crimes, now being hosted like a visiting king by the most powerful man in the world. Trump has brought Putin back in from the cold. He's got no deal in return, no mention of a ceasefire, talk of an agreement, but no detail about what this agreement is. How remarkable was it to see them both arriving today?
Well, I thought it was jaw-dropping, actually. There was going to be clearly, a courtesy extended to a significant visitor, but I mean, that had bells on it. This superpower moment, the planes landing, the red carpet, planes nose to nose, Vladimir Putin, walking towards Trump, the fly-past, military fly-past, and Trump clapping as he approached. It was tough to believe, actually. And of course, the smiles, the handshake, the pat on the back. This handshake between men who have peace in their hands, and for all those looking on and saying, look, peace isn't about being nice to this guy. He's got blood on his hands. You're rolling out the red carpet for him. What this needs is toughness, and at the very least, a starting point for Donald Trump of neutrality. But, for all the talk about leaning towards Putin, that was wrapping his arms around him.
Yeah, I think it had all the trappings of a state visit, didn't it? It was really quite extraordinary. Red carpet, as you say, it was all reward, not reprimand. This time last week, he had set this deadline, hard deadline, supposedly, ceasefire or sanctions. There was none of that. It was just he was fated like, as you say, a king. And the only other place in the last 3 years I've seen him being welcomed like that is North Korea. He went for a visit there last year, and the body language, it was the body language of bromance, very much the similar kind of matey relationship he has with Kim Jong-un. I'm not sure that's the kind of company that Donald Trump wants to keep, but that's the bracket he's in here, because they really did get on like old buddies, old friends, didn't they? There was lots of smiles, and Putin is generally more formal, more reserved when he's meeting heads of state.
Yeah, I think a lot of people would say that's actually the very company that Donald Trump wants to keep. The autocrat and the aspiring autocrat, master and apprentice. And, again, the spectacle. Putin was asked questions, and we'll talk about this. Very few questions today, but there was the opportunity of the photo call and the shouted questions asked about killing civilians.
President Putin, will you agree to a ceasefire?
Mr. President, what's your message to Vladimir Putin?
Mr. Putin, did you underestimate Ukraine?
the question of the day, very pointed, very pertinent. And of course, Putin, I think he gave it a deaf ear, pretending not to hear, pointed to the sky, smiled, and was duly removed from the situation by Trump, taken into the back of Cadillac One, the Beast, which doesn't happen a lot. You only ever see the president, right, in the back of that car.
Not even friends are invited into the Beast, to see an adversary invited for a ride along. And I mean, we talk about North Korea and Kim Jong-un. When Trump held his summit with Kim Jong-un in Singapore in 2018, he wanted to invite Kim Jong-un into the back of the Beast then, but he had more sensible advisors around him at that point, and they said that might not be a good idea. Well, this time, those voices are not there anymore, and instead we see Putin grinning in the back of the car. He
from ear to ear. That for me was the picture of the day.
Yeah, looking out the window like a child being taken for a trip out in a limo, kind of
feeling
thing.
the luxury, feeling the love.
And that was their only one-on-one of the day. We expected them to have this bilateral meeting, which would just be tete-a-tete, as you say, James. But instead, that was their time alone.
I think it's also unusual that Vladimir Putin actually got in, because not just being invited in, but that he actually took up the invitation, because his limo, his Oris limo, was waiting on the tarmac as well. So it wasn't part of the plan, I don't think.
You think it was impromptu?
Yeah, it struck me as impromptu, certainly.
That's interesting, because this was a day when he was insulated, Putin, from questions. And if that's the case, that he was driving all of that, then perhaps we saw a moment where Trump thought, oh dear, this is problematic. He's being asked about ceasefire, asked about killing civilians. I need to get this guy away. And maybe the Beast was the closest.
The getaway vehicle.
With a getaway. But we're speculating.
They have this actually bizarre moment where the pool media, so that's some of the domestic American journalists and photographers, are invited inside the room to take pictures of them sat side by side. Again, the journalists shouting over each other to ask questions, as you say, about a ceasefire, about did you underestimate Ukraine? Are you going to stop killing civilians in Russia, Mr. Putin?
Mr. Putin, will you commit to not killing any more civilians?
Thank you very much. Come on, guys. Thank you, press.
Mr. President.
Thank you, press.
Again, he stonewalls it, he stays silent, but so does Donald Trump. And, Donald Trump is a man who loves to talk and talk and talk. It must have taken all the self-restraint he could muster not to answer those questions.
He absolutely was clearly locked on to Putin and everything that Putin wanted to dictate about the logistics, the arrangements, access, simple questions, straightforward questions.
Yeah, the last thing Vladimir Putin wanted was one of those freewheeling White House press conferences where it just goes on and on and on. It's open-ended, nothing's off the table, because it's the total opposite in Russia. Any kind of press interaction is choreographed. People know, he knows where the question's coming from and he knows what they are. That's not how it works here, of course, but it's extraordinary. It must have been a condition put down from Putin, and amazing to see Trump adhere to it. Incredible.
There had been the expectation that there would be a one-on-one meeting between Presidents Putin and Trump. In the end, it was a 3-on-3 meeting. Donald Trump joined by his Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, and his Special Envoy, Steve Witkoff. Putin was joined by his Foreign Secretary, Sergei Lavrov, and
Yuri Ushakov, who's his
I was wondering about the pronunciation.
foreign policy aide in the Kremlin. He's been in that job for 13 years. Before that, he was US ambassador, or ambassador to the US for 10 years. Both of them diplomatic heavyweights. And I mean, compared to the people on the other side of the table, Rubio and Witkoff, it was men against boys. Decades of experience versus days. Realpolitik versus real estate. It was really incredible.
Yeah, that struck me. Looking down the list of the White House contingent, A, I was struck by their youth. B, I mean, clearly they have expertise in their individual spheres, but very little experience in terms of dealing with diplomats, particularly Russian, chiseled, grizzled, experienced diplomats, Lavrov, Putin, yeah, and you could just see it was like sending out the youth team against, Premiership champions. And I did wonder about that. This talk of Putin playing Trump and team, I think he had every opportunity. And so I think when you looked at the personnel, I think he would have regarded that as game on.
I think especially Witkoff is an example of how Trump values loyalty over experience. As we say, Steve Witkoff is a real estate agent. He's a property lawyer. He is not an experienced...
He's a golfing buddy.
Exactly. Yeah. He's been friends with Donald Trump for decades. As a result, he's been rewarded with this incredibly important role in Donald Trump's administration, not just Russia-Ukraine that he's looking after for the States, but also Israel, Gaza. And there he is, invited into this room, this very intimate group. And also, it was Steve Witkoff's visit to Moscow which precipitated this summit in the first place. And I guess the question now is whether Steve Witkoff had an accurate understanding of just how much Vladimir Putin was willing to move on his maximalist goals.
All the comments from Witkoff over the past kind of 5-6 months since his kind of trips to Moscow started suggests he doesn't have an accurate understanding of what the actual situation is on the ground. I mean, facts are not something that seems to be the currency that the Trump administration deals in, but detail is everything to the Putin administration. They are across all the detail, all the history, all the legal arguments, and they will know that the Trump team will not have been. And I'm sure they will have sought to exploit that. So Witkoff, for example, a few months ago, he couldn't even name the 4 Ukrainian regions that Russia had laid claim to and annexed.
That's a bad start. Steve Witkoff, for me, carries the air for me of the work experience. And, it's almost like you've spent the work experience for lunch one day, he's come back and he's got it right. Next day you send him out to solve world peace. The envoy to Gaza, the envoy to Russia, Ukraine, the most intractable world peace issues right now.
And he's got both of them
yes,
without any experience.
Well, exactly.
So this bilat lasts 2 hours, 45 minutes. The first we really recognise that it's about to come to an end is when people come in and start setting up the lecterns in the press conference room, which is where you both were. When did you get a sense of what had happened?
For me, actually, going back to Steve Witkoff, he was one of the early arrivals, just from a kind of side door, he suddenly appeared to great excitement. Everybody, iPhones in the air and all that. The look on his face was not the look of success.
It didn't look good, did it?
Didn't look like a man who had a result in the bag. And yet there was a Russian minister, wasn't there, who, do you recognise him?
Kirill Dmitriev.
Who looked actually slightly happier, I thought.
Yeah.
He was quite enjoying the attention.
But you're right, Witkoff had a kind of furrowed brow, the look of a worried man who left the room, came back, and looked like something might not be going right. But then the 2 presidents eventually emerged. And what was really amazing to me was the fact that it wasn't Trump who spoke first. It was Vladimir Putin, the guest.
Yeah.
He was the guest who played the host. And he spoke for longer than Trump, in fact. And he talked about how he welcomed his neighbor.
I would like to thank President Trump for our joint work, for the well-wishing and trustworthy tone of our conversation. It's important that both sides are result-oriented, and we see that the President of the U.S. has a very clear idea of what he would like to achieve. He sincerely cares about prosperity of his nation. Still, he understands that Russia has its own national interests.
Dear neighbour, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Tarmac, yeah.
Like it was his country. It was remarkable.
Yeah, and Donald Trump, standing quite silent, compliant, absolutely, affirming all the affection and the mutual respect chat that he was getting from Putin, who, engaged in flattery, didn't he? He's clearly a man who'd done his homework and pressed those buttons that Donald Trump wanted pressed on matters like Biden. He called it, Trump continually calls this Biden's war, and that was parroted by Putin at the lectern.
That's been the messaging for the last, 10 months since the election. He's been full of flattery, full of respect, full of deference, knowing that he has to kind of feed the ego, And there was another reference, actually, another one of the buttons he pressed, the kind of Trump bingo. It was the start of Putin's comments. He referenced the Butler assassination.
Yeah,
He said, "Good to see you alive." And in the past, he's praised Donald Trump's bravery in that episode, saying he showed the kind of courage of a real man.
Yeah.
And there was more of that there today. I think that was a reference there, trying to feed that ego.
Yeah. In terms of the substance of this news conference and the substance of a deal, which isn't a deal, and in fact, Donald Trump confirmed that.
I believe we had a very productive meeting. There were many, many points that we agreed on, most of them, I would say, a couple of big ones that we haven't quite gotten there, but we've made some headway. So there's no deal until there's a deal. I will call up NATO in a little while. I will call up the various people that I think are appropriate, and I'll, of course, call up President Zelenskyy and tell him about today's meeting.
Putin, he called it a starting point, didn't he? But there was one key obstacle that jumped out at me. Ivor, you're a man who follows Putin closely. The problem is this business of root causes.
Yeah, he said, he stood next to Trump and said Russia is sincerely interested in an end to the conflict. We've heard that before, giving the appearance of Russia wanting peace. But in order for it to be lasting, he said they need to eliminate the root causes of the conflict. That is exactly the kind of thing that Ukraine and Europe does not want to hear, because it's the Kremlin code for Russia's maximalist demands. And if he says that, that means he wants the whole lot. He hasn't backed down from his red lines at all. So these are neutrality for Ukraine, no NATO membership, because he sees the root cause for the war and the need for Russia's invasion as NATO expansion, eastward expansion. And of course, he wants limits on Ukraine's armed forces. So the fact he said that is a clear signal that he has made no concession at all and has no intention of making one in the future, no matter what they've agreed here.
What's Zelensky's reaction? I mean, as we record, it may be that Trump's spoken to him already. Maybe he's on the phone right now. What do you reckon to his reaction and the reaction in European capitals?
I think whenever Vladimir Putin is happy about something, about a deal that he's done with Donald Trump, then the default position will be that Ukraine is unhappy. It'll be a bad deal for Ukraine, I think. Because this war for Vladimir Putin has to end in a win. After 3.5 years, after all the cost, financial, human, geopolitical, he has to have a visible victory. His legacy is at stake. And so he is not going to accept anything less than securing all of Russia's goals. The big smile on his face today, at the end of the press conference as well, that look of satisfaction suggests those goals are still intact and perhaps closer.
And Trump said there would be very severe consequences if there was no ceasefire agreed to today. Well, there hasn't been, so I guess we're looking now to see whether sanctions are introduced again.
All the pressure melted away, didn't it? I mean, what struck me as well was the slogan on the back wall behind them. The slogan for the summit was "Pursuing Peace," but Vladimir Putin was definitely pursuing something else here. He was pursuing a new chapter in US-Russia relations, which he talked about first before coming to Ukraine. And I think it felt like he was kind of trolling Vladimir Zelenskyy a little bit here, enjoying the limelight, because he knows Zelenskyy will be watching this through gritted teeth. And a kind of hint of what comes next, I think, was one line of Putin's speech there. He kind of scolded Europe and Ukraine, warned them not to torpedo the nascent attempts to find peace. It feels very much like a deal has been done here that he knows Europe and Ukraine will not like, but he's trying to cast them as the problem makers, him as the problem solver, the one that wants peace, and hoping that Donald Trump has a sympathetic ear to that view.
Trump's definitely persuadable on that, though, isn't he? Because he's always saying, Putin's to blame, but Zelensky's to blame too. He treats them almost as one and the same. If anything, he has more sympathy with Putin. Which is remarkable.
No, you're right. Yeah, cute from Putin. Laying the ground for failure, and at the same time laying the blame, pointing the finger towards Europe, towards Ukraine, bringing Trump on side and creating that scenario that We've discussed in the past 48 hours, that deal that Ukraine cannot accept and for which Trump blames them. It's a shame we didn't get to ask these questions. Questions like that, questions like, okay, you said you'd be unhappy if there wasn't a ceasefire. You spoke about sanctions. What about the sanctions, actually? Where are they today? It's easy to see why Donald Trump just wanted to get off that stage without any kind of legitimate inquiry. Quite a production, that the whole day, actually. This from a guy who is showbiz, TV's The Apprentice and so on. If you look at today, that was Donald Trump, the movie, on a day that could have defined his presidency if it had gone better. He was after a TV moment every inch of that journey, from departure of the White House on Air Force One, at least 2 press gaggles. I think he's done, 3 interviews today, all with Fox News, his personal choice of channel, arguably his PR channel. That's how he would see it. This whole thing has been laced with the political PR of what he was counting on as being a success. Donald Trump, the movie, the peacemaker. He didn't get a happy ending he wanted today. Who knows what will happen in future, but I don't know. Straight to Betamax.
Here's a bit more PR for you. Literally just in the last couple of minutes as we're recording this podcast, the White House have told us that Donald Trump, during his meeting with Vladimir Putin today, handed him a letter which was from his wife, Melania Trump, apparently raising the plight of children in Ukraine and Russia, a personal letter. She wasn't in Alaska, but Donald Trump gave it to Putin on her behalf, almost as though Donald Trump doesn't know what's happening in Ukraine, that he's not seen the pictures of bombs landing on Ukrainian cities.
Well, he gets distracted, doesn't he? We know he does, and Vladimir Putin knows that, and so he came prepared with all these other kind of sweeteners to put on the table to distract Donald Trump with. We don't know what they are for sure, but ahead of this summit, on the plane over, his press secretary, Putin's press secretary, Dmitry Peskov, was talking a lot about how it's not just going to be about Ukraine. We're going to be talking about trade, investment opportunities. Putin beforehand was talking about potentially a nuclear arms control treaty. All of these things designed to distract Donald Trump from the matter at hand, Ukraine, and it seems to have worked.
Ivor, great to see you. Many thanks for being with us. When are you back to Moscow?
Sunday. Well, I leave Sunday. I think I arrive on Tuesday.
Oh, God.
Well,
You've won the gold medal for endurance this trip.
Yeah, absolutely. Ivor the engine indeed. Cheers, Ivor. And thank you for watching and listening. We'll be back in your feeds again for our usual Tuesday morning episode. In the meantime, Sky News will be continuing to follow all the fallout from this meeting online at skynews.com or on the TV channel all weekend. We'll see you on Tuesday. Bye-bye.
See you then.
Bye-bye.